A wealthy individual observed his modest employee assisting the homeless and extended a proposal that transformed her life. Before we dive into the tale, please share your thoughts in the comments and tell us which city you're tuning in from. Delight in the tale. Emily Carter had just entered her 3rd month at Miller Enterprises. Despite a lengthy day brimming with paperwork, she maintained a practice that had woven itself into the fabric of her daily life. She made her way to the quaint corner market, her familiar destination after a long day at work, and picked up some bread, juice, and granola bars. Once she completed the transaction, she stepped outside with the bags in hand and made her way across the street to the sidewalk in front of the company. A small group of individuals without homes was already gathered there. A few were perched on improvised blankets. "Emily, it's wonderful to see you," said one of the men, an elderly gentleman with a gray beard named Marvin. With a warm smile, she knelt beside him and started distributing the food. "Good evening, all. This evening we have juice and granola bars available." Weary expressions brightened, gentle laughter danced in the atmosphere as they reached for the snacks, and Emily experienced that familiar warmth in her heart, the kind that came from realizing that, despite having so little, she could make a difference for them. Unbeknownst to her, from the uppermost level of the structure, concealed behind a transparent barrier, Logan Miller observed intently. The company's CEO was not one to be easily impressed. Detached, logical, and driven by results, he seldom acknowledged the personal lives of his staff. Recently, he had observed that young woman departing from work and heading straight to that gathering in front of the building. Initially, he dismissed it as mere coincidence, but soon he came to the unsettling realization that it was occurring daily. What's even more captivating is that she never sought anything in exchange. Resting against his opulent office desk, Logan squinted as he observed the way Emily smiled while conversing with Marvin and the others. He scowled. "What is her gain from this?" he whispered softly to himself. With a slight shake of his head, he turned away from the window and returned to his tasks. Yet, a fragment of his thoughts lingered on that unusual staff member. The following day proved to be quite intense. Emily dedicated a significant portion of her time to arranging reports and replying to emails for her direct supervisor, who led the finance department. The role was challenging, yet she remained silent about her struggles, fully aware of its necessity. That afternoon, as she diligently sifted through a pile of documents, she sensed a shadow looming over her desk. As she glanced upward, her gaze met Logan Miller's, who stood directly in front of her, his eyes fixed intently on her. Her heart raced with an unexpected thrill. "Mr. Miller," she said hastily, striving to mask her unease. "Is it Emily, then?" She gave a slight nod. She was taken aback that the CEO himself recognized her name. "What is the duration of your employment here?" he inquired, arms crossed defiantly. "Several months?" Logan nodded thoughtfully, as if weighing his options. "Are you fond of your work?" Emily blinked several times. It was an uncomplicated inquiry, yet from him, it carried the weight of an unspoken challenge. "Absolutely, I do. It's quite a challenge, and I'm gaining so much knowledge along the way." He observed her intently for a moment before offering a subtle nod. "Excellent. Maintain the momentum." He turned and walked away, leaving her behind, enveloped in confusion. As the day drew to a close, Emily made her way to the market, selected some snacks, and generously distributed them to those in need on the streets. Logan, having already departed, exited through the main entrance and caught sight of her once more. On the sidewalk, kneeling down, offering food with a heartfelt smile. He paused by his car, observing her quietly. The scene stirred a mix of unease and fascination within him. He had never encountered someone who engaged in this daily practice without any anticipation of reward. As he settled into his car and began the drive home, Logan was unaware that, for the first time in ages, his thoughts were drifting away from the demands of his job. The subsequent days unfolded in a similar manner. Emily dedicated her workdays to navigating through spreadsheets and emails, diligently fulfilling the precise tasks demanded by the finance department. She operated with precision, maintained a low profile, and committed herself fully, yet she never craved the spotlight. Her sole respite arrived at day's end, as she departed the company and headed directly to the homeless. Logan Miller observed, where once he had merely cast an occasional glance out the window, perceiving it as a fleeting moment, now everything had shifted. It had become a routine. Promise. To him, it was utterly perplexing. This young woman dedicates her resources and energy to assist those she doesn't know on a daily basis. That's quite unusual. He found himself softly repeating those words while observing Emily in her familiar place, kneeling, distributing snacks and beaming. She appeared truly joyful. Logan averted his gaze from the window, troubled by the turmoil within his mind. He had always thought that individuals acted with the anticipation of receiving something in exchange. Wealth, acknowledgement, advancements, future benefits. What was the benefit for Emily in this situation? The daily grind at the office never varied. Emily had gained a reputation for being effective yet a bit awkward, particularly in moments of anxiety. On that specific day, while she was wrapping up a report, a notification suddenly appeared on her screen. A sudden meeting with Logan Miller and the finance team. She took a deep breath. She didn't fear the CEO. Yet, his presence carried an unusual gravity within the space. Logan possessed a solemn presence and an intense stare. He was straightforward, concise, and always avoided unnecessary chatter. Emily picked up her notepad and made her way to the meeting room on the 34th floor. The moment she entered, she sensed the gaze of her co-workers upon her. And, even more crucially, the intensity of Logan's gaze. He identified her without hesitation. Rather than offering a warm greeting or any sign of engagement, he merely inclined his head slightly, indicating that the meeting was set to commence. "Gentlemen, let's cut to the chase." Logan began, his tone resolute and direct. The most recent reports indicate robust growth. However, there are superfluous expenses that require optimization. The department heads commenced their presentations, sharing figures and proposals, as Emily sat quietly, diligently taking notes. Her concentration was so intense that she failed to notice Logan's gaze on her for a fleeting instant before he averted his eyes. As the meeting concluded, Emily rose alongside her peers, but just as she was about to depart, a resonant voice captured her attention. Emily felt her body tighten immediately. He had uttered her name. Once more, as she turned, her gaze fell upon Logan, who was casually leaning against the table with his arms crossed, his expression remaining impassive. "Join me on this journey." Emily gave a subtle nod, striving to maintain her composure as she trailed behind him to his office. Upon entering, he shut the door and settled into his immaculate desk chair, gesturing for her to sit opposite him. "You have been part of this team for several weeks now. How do you feel about the company at this point?" She blinked several times. That inquiry once more. "I truly enjoy it. It's tough, yet I'm gaining so much knowledge. What are your aspirations for the future?" Emily paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. She had not anticipated a CEO to show interest in something so intimate. "I aspire to advance in the finance sector. Perhaps seek a more secure role and, who knows, aim for a postgraduate degree in the future." Logan nodded thoughtfully, as if weighing the information in his mind. He shifted the conversation to a different topic. "Each evening as you exit the building, I notice you assisting those experiencing homelessness." Emily felt a sudden jolt in her chest. "Do you understand?" She reiterated, her eyes fluttering. "My workspace provides a view of the entrance to the building. I observe you each evening." Emily sensed a warm flush spread across her cheeks. Had he been observing her? Daily? "Is it really an issue, though?" she inquired with a touch of uncertainty. "Negative." Logan shook his head in disbelief. "I simply cannot grasp it. This is a daily routine for you. You invest your resources, your moments. It appears that you are not seeking acknowledgement. What is the reason?" Emily felt a sense of ease wash over her as she recognized that he held no judgment towards her. He was merely perplexed. "I enjoy offering assistance. But what is the reason?" She gave a slight shrug. "If I found myself in their situation, I would hope for someone to extend the same kindness to me." Moreover, it's a minor detail, yet it holds significance. Logan paused, his gaze fixed on her in quiet contemplation. He leaned in, intertwining his fingers on the desk before him. So, is this part of your daily routine? Indeed. He released a soft sigh and whispered a few words to himself before giving a slight nod. You're no longer needed. Emily's eyes fluttered open. What is happening? Feel free to return to your tasks. After a brief moment of uncertainty, she rose to her feet and exited the office. With the door gently shutting behind her, she paused, allowing herself a moment to absorb the whirlwind of events that had just unfolded. As the evening wore on and she stepped out of the building, Emily found herself following her familiar routine once again, purchasing meals and distributing them to those in need. Logan, perched in his office above, continued to observe intently. But now he was actively engaged. He was seeking clarity. What could possibly motivate someone so young, with such limited earnings, to allocate her funds in that manner? He folded his arms, a hint of annoyance creeping in as he reflected on his own actions. This is quite perplexing. For the first time in ages, he found himself yearning for comprehension. The days slipped by swiftly, and before Emily realized it, the month had come to a close. Her routine at the company had become quite familiar by this point. Spend the day immersed in the finance department, then visit the quaint market to pick up some food, cross the street, and share it with those in need on the sidewalk. Unbeknownst to her, Logan Miller kept a watchful eye from his office above. He was perplexed, yet he found it impossible to overlook. Emily never sought anything in exchange, never boasted about her actions, never attempted to leverage them for recognition. She did it solely out of her own desire. For some frustrating reason, Logan felt compelled to grasp the underlying motives. However, on that Friday, an unusual occurrence took place. It was the day of reckoning for the wallet. As Emily accessed her banking app that morning, a wave of relief washed over her. She had received her first paycheck. The sum wasn't substantial, yet it sufficed to settle the rent, clear some lingering bills, and stock up on groceries for the month. Or at least that was the intention. As the day progressed and the workday drew to a close, a single thought lingered in her mind, refusing to fade away. Marvin, the elderly gentleman who had spent years on the streets, remained ever courteous and gracious, even in the face of his challenging circumstances. His coat was frayed and his shoes were on the verge of falling apart. There was also Miss Ellen, who lay beneath a delicate blanket. Paul, a young man in his 20s, often spoke of escaping this life, yet he never quite succeeded in securing a job. Emily realized she had the potential to offer them something greater. Before she even noticed, her path had shifted. She entered a bargain clothing shop and picked up coats and shoes for Marvin. She included a cozy blanket for Ellen and gathered some necessities for the rest. She headed to the grocery store, gathering ample supplies to ensure everyone enjoyed a satisfying meal that evening. When she finally exited the store, her wallet was nearly devoid of cash. Yet her heart brimmed with fullness. "Emily, this is overwhelming," Marvin exclaimed, clutching the new coat with glistening eyes. "I'm at a loss for words to express my gratitude," Ellen exclaimed, wrapping herself in the blanket. Paul, ever the one to put on a brave face, cast a glance at his new sneakers and mumbled under his breath, "This will assist me in securing a position, Emily." "Thank you." She smiled, a comforting warmth blossoming in her chest. "No need for gratitude. You would reciprocate for me." That night resonated with an abundance of laughter, far surpassing the ordinary. The group was joyful, and that was all that concerned Emily until she glanced at the clock and recognized a minor yet significant detail. She found herself without any funds to return home. Emily blinked repeatedly, wishing her mind would conjure a resolution. However, it turned out there was none. She had exhausted all her funds. With no time to linger, she resolved that walking was the wisest choice. Ultimately, what's the time frame really going to be? After a 30-minute stroll, the answer finally revealed itself. The streets grew increasingly desolate, the chill of the evening settling in, and her feet throbbed in the confines of her ill-fitting work shoes. She let out a soft sigh, wrapping her delicate coat more snugly around her. A sleek black car glided to a stop beside her, signaling that the journey was far from over. Emily observed the window descending gradually, and as she peered inside, her heart raced with excitement. It was Logan Miller. He arched an eyebrow. "What distance do you intend to cover on your walk?" Emily parted her lips, yet a moment of uncertainty held her back. "Excellent. Out of everyone, it just had to be him." "Home," she replied, attempting to keep her tone light. Logan cast his eyes toward the path that lay before him. "Do you reside at a distance?" "Absolutely." A moment of quiet lingered before Logan let out a sigh and turned the key in the lock. "Come on," Emily paused. Accepting a ride from the CEO of the company felt like a questionable choice. Yet, in all honesty, she felt utterly drained, so she agreed. As she settled into the car, a wave of warmth enveloped her, prompting a sigh of relief to escape her lips. Logan navigated the road quietly for a few moments, then stole a glance at her. "What brings you to walk home?" Emily found no justification for deceit. "I seem to have exhausted my funds." Logan's grip on the steering wheel intensified. "Did you receive your payment today?" "Indeed." "Have you really used up all your resources already?" She gave a slight nod. "About what?" Emily paused for a moment before responding, aiding those without homes. The vehicle fell into an utter hush. Emily glanced over at him and noticed Logan gazing at her as if she had just uttered something astonishing. "You used your whole paycheck to assist those you don't even know?" She released a soft, uncomfortable chuckle. "When you frame it like that, it really does seem like a poor financial choice." Logan's eyes fluttered open and closed a few times. "Simply put, it is." Emily folded her arms, gazing out the window. "Not for me." Logan's gaze remained fixed on the road ahead, yet she sensed the wheels turning in his mind as he absorbed her words. After a brief moment, he inhaled deeply. "Do you have enough funds for the rent at the very least?" Emily offered a smile, her gaze drifting elsewhere. "No, but I will find a way." Logan emitted a brief, mirthless chuckle. "Incredible." He paused, unable to continue his thought. Emily arched an eyebrow. "And truly, what is it?" "Distinct." She fluttered her eyelashes. "Did I just receive a compliment?" The remainder of the journey was serene, yet not in an awkward way. As Logan finally arrived in front of her building, she exhaled a breath of relief. "I appreciate the ride, Mr. Miller." He gazed at her for a brief moment before responding. "If you plan to continue spending your money in this manner, I would appreciate being informed. I'll take care of your ride home." Emily chuckled, a smile spreading across her face as she shook her head in disbelief. "I will take care of it. I consistently do." She pushed the door ajar and ventured outside. Before stepping into the building, she paused, turning to him with words that lingered in the air, leaving Logan Miller to sit in his car for several minutes after her departure. "Sleep well, Mr. Miller. Thank you very much." "For compassion." He scowled, observing her vanish into the structure. And then it dawned on him. He genuinely cared. But what is the reason? Logan Miller preferred to avoid distractions. His days unfolded with meticulous precision, each minute accounted for, and he seldom strayed from his carefully crafted schedule. Tasks, discussions, documentation, additional tasks. He was a man driven by outcomes, not emotions. Yet, on that Monday morning, as he settled into his desk at the office, an unsettling feeling gnawed at him, demanding his attention. He found himself lost in thought, and the reason was Emily Carter. He couldn't shake off the thoughts of Friday night. As he caught sight of her strolling by herself, he noticed the pause she took before agreeing to the lift. The dialogue exchanged within the confines of the vehicle. She devoted her whole paycheck to aiding the homeless. All of her earnings. He lingered on that idea in his mind, seeking to unravel its meaning. What sort of individual behaves in that manner? Emily Carter exhibited a wild abandon, a lack of responsibility, and an almost nonsensical selflessness that left him bewildered. Yet what stood out most was her captivating nature. Logan despised the things that eluded his comprehension. The morning at the office unfolded like any other day. Emily arrived punctually, as she always did, and began her tasks, oblivious to the fact that the CEO was observing her intermittently. She appeared unremarkable, as though nothing had transpired. "You can't just ignore this, Logan," he muttered to himself, rhythmically tapping a pen against his desk. After an hour of scrutinizing reports with a wandering mind, Logan ultimately reached a conclusion. He lifted the receiver and pressed a key. "Please have Emily Carter come to my office." At that moment, Emily was engrossed in the task of organizing a document when a message came through. Her stomach nodded gently. What was it that compelled Logan Miller to seek her out? Her heart raced slightly as she rose and made her way down the corridor to the 35th floor, where the CEO's office awaited. The assistant acknowledged her presence with a nod and gestured towards the door. "Feel free to enter." He is in anticipation. Emily inhaled deeply. She smoothed her blouse and grasped the doorknob. Upon her entrance, she found Logan positioned behind his imposing dark wooden desk, his expression a mystery that offered no clues. "Shut the door." She complied, striving to maintain an air of composure. "Did you request my presence, Mr. Miller?" He clasped his hands on the desk, gazing at her intently for a moment before he began to speak. "Absolutely. I'm eager to grasp a concept." "Okay, what's going on? What motivates you to engage in this activity?" Emily scowled. "What should I do? Invest your resources in aiding those who may never offer you anything in exchange." She blinked several times. So this is what it all comes down to. Are you truly curious to find out?" She inquired, her arms crossed defensively. Logan maintained his unwavering focus on her. After a brief pause, Emily gathered her thoughts before responding. "I undertake this task simply because I possess the ability to do so. I observe them daily, fully aware that no one else seems to take notice. As a result," she hesitated, carefully selecting her phrases. "If I found myself in their situation, I would hope for someone to take care of it on my behalf." Logan propped his elbows on the desk, leaning in just a bit. "However, you are under no duty to assist them. There is no expectation for you to do so. Since when is it necessary to have a mandate to act with integrity?" A moment of quiet hung in the air. Logan gazed intently into her eyes. Emily maintained her steady gaze, resolute. With a deep sigh, he reclined in his chair, letting the weight of the world momentarily slip away. "You're truly remarkable," Emily offered a faint smile. "I've come across that sentiment frequently." Logan rubbed his face, grappling with a conundrum that seemed impossible to unravel. "It's clear that this way of living isn't sustainable for you, isn't it? Exhausting your finances and placing yourself in challenging circumstances." Emily merely shrugged in response. "Yet I consistently find a way to resolve it." He inhaled deeply and slowly shook his head. "Okay, you may return to your tasks." Emily gave a slight nod before turning to depart. Just as she was about to turn the handle, Logan's words halted her in her tracks. "If you ever find yourself in need of some financial assistance, just reach out to me. I will take care of your transportation." She pivoted to confront him. "Is this some kind of prank?" "I truly mean it." Emily squinted, her gaze sharp and focused. "Mr. Miller, thank you for your concern, but I am capable of handling things on my own." I had the same impression. Yet on Friday night, you found yourself wandering alone in the chill, having poured every last penny into the hands of unfamiliar faces. Emily parted her lips to speak, yet hesitated and fell silent. He made a valid observation. Logan folded his arms across his chest. "Next time, do consider accepting a ride." Emily fixed her gaze on him for a moment, then let out a soft sigh. "Should there be another opportunity, I'll give it some thought." And then she stepped outside. In the days that ensued, Logan continued to focus on her. Not out of desire. It happened without my control. He sought to uncover the motivations behind that young woman. Yet, with each attempt to uncover a rational explanation, his frustration only deepened. Emily stayed unchanged. She toiled diligently, shared understated humor with her peers, and was always ready to lend a hand to those in need. As the day drew to a close, She carried on with her customary interactions with those experiencing homelessness. Logan continued to observe. Yet, for the first time, he found himself at a loss regarding how to handle that information. On the subsequent Friday, an unforeseen event took place. As Emily prepared to step out, a sudden downpour began to drench the world outside. She gazed at the glistening streets within. This would complicate matters. Nevertheless, she took hold of her umbrella and set out. As she approached the entrance of the building, a sleek black car glided to a stop beside her. The window descended gradually, revealing Logan Miller. Emily's eyes grew large with surprise. "Excuse me, Mr. Miller?" He gazed at her, his expression a mystery. "Are you truly considering venturing out in this downpour?" She blinked slowly. "I exist." With a heavy sigh, he turned the key and opened the door. "Come on in." Emily paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. Is this turning into a routine? Let's keep it simple. Simply step inside. She laughed softly and, for the second time, agreed to the ride. The journey began in silence, with the gentle patter of rain tapping softly on the windows. After a brief pause, Logan finally spoke up, shattering the stillness that had enveloped them. "Have you ever considered the possibility of requesting a salary increase?" Emily scowled. "Excuse me? Your compensation evidently falls short. Have you ever inquired about a salary increase?" She emitted a short, light chuckle. "I believe it would take at least a year of working here before I could even think about it." Logan focused intently on the road ahead. "Perhaps not." Emily observed him intently. "What is the significance of that?" He gave a slight shrug. "This suggests that your worth to the company could be greater than you think." She blinked several times. Did that come across as a compliment? Just as she was about to pose her question, Logan arrived, parking in front of her building. Emily paused, her hand hovering over the doorknob, uncertainty swirling within her. "Mr. Miller, what motivates you to take this action?" He glanced over at her. "What are you up to?" "This, providing transportation for me." "Compassionate." Logan paused, contemplating his response. "As this was the first time I truly wished to grasp your essence." Emily sensed her heartbeat quicken, surpassing its usual rhythm. She opened the door, stepped out of the car, and just before entering the building, uttered a phrase that brought a smile to Logan's face for the first time in ages. "Good night, Mr. Miller. I appreciate the ride." He observed her as she entered, and without being aware of it, a faint smile appeared on his face. Logan Miller had always thought of himself as someone who lacked curiosity. He consistently held the view that the world operated in straightforward manners. Individuals engaged in actions with the anticipation of receiving something in return. Yet Emily Carter continually defied his expectations, and it vexed him in a manner he found impossible to overlook. Recently, Logan had observed something even more peculiar. He began to see Emily in a new light, beyond the confines of their professional interactions. It transcended the journey itself, or the absurd manner in which she allocated her funds. At that moment, he became aware of her presence in the office. Her ability to weave in understated humor when she felt at ease. The manner in which she knitted her brows in concentration. Her selfless assistance to colleagues, devoid of any desire for acknowledgement. And what's the most frustrating aspect? She was completely unaware of the influence she wielded. On that Monday morning, Logan sat in his office, poring over reports, when he caught snippets of a conversation drifting in from near the door. "Emily, do you have a moment?" It was Mark, a finance manager. "Absolutely, what's on your mind?" Emily's voice had a bright and joyful quality. "I require assistance with a report. Would you mind taking a look at it for me?" Emily took a brief moment before responding. "I may not be the most qualified for this, but I'm willing to give it a shot." Logan scowled. What was it that made her constantly question her own skills? He recognized Emily's exceptional talent in her field, superior to the majority present. Yet, for some inexplicable reason, she remained oblivious to it. And he loathed the moment he understood that he wished for her to witness it. As the workday drew to a close, Logan observed Emily exiting the building, making her way to the familiar little market. He ought to have seen it coming. It formed a crucial element of her daily practice. Yet, on this occasion, an unsettling sensation lingered. Emily's usual smile was absent. Within the confines of the store, Emily gathered several items and set them down on the counter. The cashier regarded her with a faint smile. The typical choice? Emily paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. She glanced at her wallet, then at the items before her. For the first time in ages, she came to the realization that she couldn't acquire everything her heart desired. This month's paycheck disappeared more quickly than she anticipated. She still had to cover her rent, settle her bills, and buy groceries for the week. She always found fulfillment in putting aside her own comfort to assist those in need. But in that instant, the weight of reality bore down on her more intensely than ever before. "Is that you, Emily?" the cashier summoned. She offered a smile, attempting to conceal her true feelings. "I'll settle for a bit less today, but come next week, I'll compensate for it." He nodded, carefully gathering the items. Emily exited the market and made her way across the street to the area where the homeless individuals gathered. Yet, on this particular day, she sensed a heaviness in her chest that was different from before. For the first time, she pondered the unsettling thought. What if there comes a day when I can no longer offer my assistance? From the rooftop, Logan Miller observed an unusual sight that evening. Emily remained present, distributing food. Yet, there was an undeniable quality in her movements, in the way her gaze lingered on the homeless individuals, an understated nuance. Yet he managed to catch it. Without hesitation, he grabbed his phone and pressed a button. "Please have Emily Carter come to my office." At this moment, as Emily organized her belongings, a message arrived, catching her attention. She let out a weary breath. What was it that Logan Miller desired this time? Burdened by fatigue, she took hold of her badge and made her way to the 35th floor. As she stepped into the office, Logan was already on his feet, leaning against his desk with his arms crossed. He observed her intently for a moment before he began to speak. "Kindly shut the door, please." Emily arched an eyebrow yet complied. "Mr. Miller, if this pertains to our earlier conversation, I have already expressed that I am perfectly fine. Is that truly the case?" She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Logan had a knack for understanding others. At that moment, he was deciphering Emily effortlessly, as if she were a transparent narrative. He advanced a step. "Today, your purchases were fewer than normal." Emily stood still. "You were observing me?" "I consistently observe." She blinked several times, attempting to comprehend that. "Mr. Miller, I understand you find my habit unusual, but I truly don't require it. Request a salary increase." Emily came to a halt. "Excuse me?" Logan folded his arms across his chest. "You are worthy of a salary increase. Request one." Emily's expression darkened. "I believe this isn't the ideal moment." Logan squinted, his gaze sharp and focused. "Emily, your dedication surpasses that of many colleagues in this workplace. You are worthy of a higher salary. I have been here for just a few months. So, do you really want to spend an entire year grappling with the idea that you deserve better?" Emily took a deep breath. She found herself at a loss for words in that moment. Logan observed her for a brief moment before letting out a sigh. "It's essential to recognize your own worth." She averted her gaze. "I recognize my value." He wore a subtle smirk, as if daring someone to respond. "Absolutely not. However, I certainly do." Emily sensed her heart racing more than usual. "What makes it important to you?" she inquired softly. Logan paused, his silence stretching out before he finally responded. "My desire is to gain insight into your perspective." And for some reason, that was the most genuine thing he had ever expressed to anyone. Emily blinked several times, absorbing that information. Then she performed an action that took Logan by surprise. Her lips curled into a smile. "Mr. Miller, you certainly stand out as a CEO." Logan arched an eyebrow. "And you are the most determined employee I have ever encountered." She chuckled softly. He wore a subtle smirk, and for the first time since meeting Emily Carter, Logan Miller recognized that his desire extended beyond mere understanding of her. He was curious about the outcome of maintaining his concern. In the days that ensued, a transformation occurred. Emily remained unchanged, continuously committed to her craft, continuing to assist those without shelter each evening. But now, Logan had stepped beyond mere observation. He was becoming engaged. He summoned her to his office with increasing frequency. I engaged in deeper conversation with her, evaluated her understanding, inquiries made. As the days went by, his conviction grew stronger about one particular truth. Emily Carter stood apart from everyone he had encountered before. It both disturbed and intrigued him. Yet above all, he was eager to discover the path that lay ahead. For Logan Miller, it was all about the art of strategy. Ultimately, that's the foundation upon which he constructed a billion-dollar empire. He consistently found himself in the company of driven, capable individuals. Many of them seemed to prioritize their own interests above all else. However, Emily Carter chose not to engage in that game. She was distinct. She made no effort to dazzle. She remained unobtrusive. Nevertheless, he found it impossible to disregard her presence. And that troubled him more than he was willing to acknowledge. Recently, Logan observed that Emily had a tendency to undervalue her own abilities. Her commitment was unwavering, her observations sharp, and her effort tireless. Yet she failed to recognize her own worth. He couldn't quite grasp why that bothered him to such an extent. Yet he was aware that he wished to challenge her, to determine whether she possessed the same level of capability he was beginning to suspect. On Tuesday morning, Logan stepped into his office and summoned one of his directors. Compile a detailed analysis of the operating expenses from the previous quarter. Please ensure it is delivered by the end of the week. The director gave a slight nod. However, just as he was about to exit the room, Logan interjected and included Emily Carter in the team. The man blinked several times. Is it Emily Carter? The entry-level aide? Absolutely. The director paused, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. She is a newcomer. Do you really think she can manage it? Logan folded his arms across his chest. I'm eager to discover her potential. In the midst of crafting her report, Emily found herself interrupted by an email regarding a new project. Her brow furrowed as she examined the details. Expenses incurred during the previous quarter. Comprehensive analysis. Presentation intended for the board members. Peculiar occurrence. She was part of the team. She arched an eyebrow. Could this have been an error? Just as her thoughts began to swirl, a direct message from Logan Miller appeared on her screen. Please visit my office. With a deep breath, Emily rose to her feet. As she stepped into the office, Logan stood beside his desk, cradling a cup of coffee in his hands. He raised his gaze as she entered the room. Please shut the door. Emily complied, striving to maintain her composure. Excuse me, Mr. Miller? Is this email? Could it have been an error? Logan arched an eyebrow. Which error are you referring to? This project bears my name. I'm merely a helper. He folded his arms across his chest. What about it? Her expression darkened. Typically, it is the more seasoned professionals who engage in projects of this nature. Logan casually sipped his coffee, treating it like a mere afterthought. Indeed, you have gained valuable experience. Emily's eyes fluttered open. Is that the way it operates? He merely shrugged, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. At this moment, it certainly does. She squinted, a look of distrust crossing her face. Is this an examination? Logan offered a faint smile. What if it is? Emily folded her arms across her chest. What is the reason? He locked eyes with her for a moment before responding. I believe you have more potential than you realize. I wish to verify my correctness. She found herself at a loss for words in that moment. For the very first time, someone had faith in her even before she found it within herself. And that was something entirely fresh. The week flew by in a blur. The endeavor proved to be more challenging than Emily had anticipated. She needed to examine figures, scrutinize previous reports, and grasp the intricacies of the company's financial information. However, to her surprise, she found enjoyment in the challenge. On Thursday night, as she delved into the material, an unexpected email from Logan caught her attention. "Is the report prepared?" Emily responded, "Nearly, wrapping up the last tweaks." His reply arrived just moments afterward. "Join me in my office." At this moment, Emily took a deep breath. She rose and made her way to the 35th floor. As she entered the room, Logan was at his desk, engrossed in some papers. He gazed at her, gesturing toward the chair positioned before him. "Take a seat." Emily complied, a flicker of apprehension coursing through her. He grasped a copy of her report, scrutinizing it for a brief moment before he began to articulate his thoughts. "It exceeded my expectations." She arched an eyebrow. "Did I just receive a compliment?" Logan offered a faint smile. "The choice is yours." Emily rolled her eyes, a playful smile tugging at her lips. He set the report down on the desk. "The presentation is scheduled for tomorrow. Are you prepared?" She paused for a moment before giving a slight nod. "Indeed." Logan gazed at her for a brief moment. Suddenly, he uttered a remark that took her by surprise. "Well done, Emily." Emily paused, caught in a moment of stillness. She had never quite gotten accustomed to receiving compliments, and coming from Logan Miller, it carried even greater significance. She inhaled deeply and offered a warm smile. "Thank you, Mr. Miller." He gave a slight nod. For the first time since their paths had crossed, Logan observed something different. He longed to witness her development, beyond the confines of the organization. Yet it was due to his genuine concern. That was perilous. On Friday, Emily was fully prepared for the presentation. The board members convened in the meeting room. Logan entered the room and settled into the chair at the head of the table. He cast a glance at Emily and offered a subtle nod. With a steadying inhale, she commenced her journey. She discussed operational expenses, showcased graphs, and emphasized opportunities for enhancement. For the first time, she sensed a genuine connection to that place. As she concluded, an eerie stillness enveloped the room for a brief moment. Suddenly, a board member began to applaud. The rest trailed behind. Emily found it almost unbelievable. Logan regarded her with a newfound intensity in his gaze. "Excellent work, Carter." She smiled, a gentle warmth blossoming in her chest. For the first time, she felt a spark of possibility, realizing she could transcend her own expectations. Logan had a point regarding her. In that instant, she truly perceived it. Emily Carter had never been accustomed to being acknowledged. She consistently put in the effort, yet she was never one to seek the spotlight. She concentrated on performing well and maintaining her course. However, following that Friday's presentation, everything transformed. The glances exchanged in the office held a new significance when directed at her. A greater number of individuals acknowledged her presence. Several approached seeking guidance. And the most peculiar aspect of it all was that Logan Miller appeared to be truly delighted. On Monday morning, Emily stepped into the office and noticed an envelope waiting for her on the desk. Her expression darkened as she caught sight of her name displayed prominently on the front. As she opened it, a brief and straightforward note awaited her. "Well done on the presentation. Take this as a source of motivation." Emily arched an eyebrow. Within the envelope, she discovered a substantial bonus accompanying her paycheck. She paused, the air caught in her lungs. Is this for real? Before she could fully comprehend the situation, she felt the presence of someone beside her. "Greetings, Carter." She spun around abruptly and caught sight of Logan, his hands tucked into his pockets, his face betraying no emotion. "Mr. Miller, is this a bonus?" He gave a slight nod. "Absolutely." Emily blinked several times. "What is the reason?" "For you, it's well earned." Her heart raced with sudden excitement. Logan was not the type of leader to offer praise easily. If he expressed this, it was because he genuinely believed it. And in some way, that carried a significance beyond what it ought to. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. He merely nodded and took a step back. Emily stood there, grappling with the complexities of the situation unfolding between them. In the days that ensued, Logan began to exhibit a change in behavior. He summoned Emily to additional meetings, seeking her insights on decisions typically reserved for the upper management. And the most captivating aspect was the way he gazed at her with a newfound perspective. In a subtle manner, Emily sensed his gaze upon her. At times, she found herself gazing at him in return. One evening, after a long day at work, Emily stepped out of the building and, as was her routine, made her way to the quaint little grocery store. As she stepped outside, her gaze fell upon a black car idling across the street. The window descended gradually, revealing him at last. "Logan Miller, are you seriously going to continue this even after receiving the bonus?" he inquired, a touch of wit lacing his tone. Emily chuckled softly. "Absolutely." He observed her intently for a brief moment before he finally opened the car door. "Come on in." Emily's eyes fluttered. "Pardon me, what did you say?" "Hop in the car." She frowned, expressing her desire to witness this firsthand. "What is it that you desire?" "I desire to witness it firsthand." Emily paused briefly. Yet, a voice within her urged her to leave. For the first time, Logan Miller accompanied her to explore the homeless community. The situation was nearly laughable. The crowd regarded Logan as if he had just descended from a distant world. To be honest, he appeared entirely mismatched for the situation. Emily stifled a chuckle as Marvin, the eldest among them, regarded Logan with a wary gaze. "So, you're in charge of Emily?" Logan nodded, his arms crossed firmly. "Absolutely." Marvin scrutinized him from head to toe. "Well, this is unexpected. A suit in this neck of the woods." "Surprise," Logan said, his voice devoid of emotion. Emily had to suppress a chuckle that threatened to escape her lips. As she distributed the food, she observed that Logan was genuinely focused. He witnessed the gratitude in their expressions, observed their joy, and recognized the genuine influence of her actions. For the first time, he found himself at a loss for words. Upon completion, Emily directed her gaze towards Logan. "So, what are your thoughts?" He appeared deep in contemplation. "Experiencing it up close brings a new perspective," she smiled. "Assisting others brings a sense of fulfillment. It would be beneficial to give it a go more frequently." He lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. "Don't get too comfortable," Emily chuckled. Yet, beneath the surface, she sensed that Logan Miller had undergone a transformation. Only a small amount. Perhaps he was still unaware of it. In the days that ensued, their connection transformed. It wasn't overt, yet it lingered in the background. There were additional looks exchanged, chill chats, and above all, an evolving bond that neither of them was willing to acknowledge. Yet, it was a development that was bound to occur. The inquiry was, to what extent would it reach? Emily Carter had never imagined that, in such a brief period, she would come to feel a genuine sense of belonging at the company. Following the triumphant presentation, the surprise bonus, and especially that evening when Logan Miller participated in her volunteer efforts, a shift had occurred. Not only in her interactions with her colleagues, but also in her connection with Logan. An unvoiced connection lingered between them. It was an unspoken truth between them, a presence that could not be overlooked. Perhaps that's the reason some individuals began to take notice, and they certainly weren't pleased about it. The morning unfolded just like countless others before it. As Emily sifted through the documents, an unexpected notification caught her attention. A time-sensitive email dispatched by the finance director. "I would like to have a conversation with you." Next, we moved to conference room 3. Emily scowled. That was peculiar. With determination, she took her notebook and made her way to the room. Upon her entrance, she discovered the director, the department manager, and 2 additional supervisors present. At the heart of the table lay a stack of printed papers. The air was thick with tension. "Emily, please have a seat," the director said, cutting to the chase. She did, yet a feeling of discomfort began to swell within her. "What's happening?" she inquired. The manager inhaled deeply and gestured toward the documents. "Here are the reports you submitted last week." She examined the documents closely. Indeed, those were the identical operational cost reports. And, she inquired, the director tossed another stack of documents before her. The audit team has examined these reports, revealing significant inconsistencies in the figures. Emily scowled. Pardon me, what did you say? The manager folded his arms across his chest. It seems there are allegations against you regarding the manipulation of financial data. Emily. Her heart plummeted. Is this? An error has occurred. She snatched the papers and swiftly scrutinized them. The figures varied from what she had provided. Yet, there was an unsettling feeling in the air. These were not her figures. These reports were changed, she stated, her tone resolute. The director appeared unconvinced. Do you really think so? Emily sensed a warm flush rise to her cheeks. I would never tamper with financial data. The manager maintained her gaze for an extended moment before releasing a deep sigh. I regret to inform you, Emily, that the board has made the decision to suspend you until this matter is resolved. It was as if the earth had vanished from under her, leaving her in a void. Put on hold? The director clarified that this is the usual protocol for situations of this nature. During our investigation, you will be on leave and will not have access to the company's systems. Emily struggled to absorb his words, but all she could think was, this can't be real. After several hours, Emily exited the building, carrying her possessions in a box. Onlookers cast curious glances in her direction. There were murmurs. People averted their gaze. A knot tightened in her chest as a familiar voice drifted from behind her. Emily. She glanced over to find Logan Miller approaching, his pace brisk and his demeanor intense. Her heart tightened even more. So, it seems you've caught wind of it, she whispered. He halted before her, his keen gaze examining her intently. What on earth is happening? Emily bit her lip, struggling to hold back her irritation. I find myself in a state of suspension. They are alleging that I manipulated the data. Logan's gaze deepened with an unsettling intensity. That's absurd. I understand, but I find myself unable to demonstrate that I acted without fault. He paused, a stillness enveloping him, before folding his arms across his chest. Who evaluated your reports? Emily inhaled deeply. The finance manager alongside a supervisor. But I promise you, Logan, I had nothing to do with this. His eyes narrowed just a bit. I trust you, she said, blinking. He had faith in her. Logan inhaled deeply, attempting to rein in his irritation. Please allow me a moment. I will take care of this. Emily shook her head in disbelief. Logan, you can't simply intervene. This may cause you pain. He lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. Do you honestly believe that I have any concern for that? She remained silent. He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Stay close. This is far from finished. In that instant, Emily found herself believing him. For the first time, someone was ready to stand up for her. Over the course of the next 2 days, Emily found herself at home, grappling with uncertainty about her next steps. She found herself lost, uncertain of her next steps, her thoughts tangled, and struggling to demonstrate her innocence. However, on Wednesday afternoon, an unexpected message arrived for her. The call came from a number I didn't recognize. Is that you, Emily? I discovered something. Please ensure your presence at the office tomorrow morning. LM felt her heart race. What had Logan unearthed? The following morning, Emily made her way back to the building. All eyes were on her as she made her way down the hallway. Yet, she remained indifferent. Her thoughts were consumed by the need to discover what Logan had to reveal. As she entered his office, her heart raced with a mix of anticipation and dread. For Logan, solitude was a distant concept. The finance manager and a supervisor sat at the table, their discomfort evident. Logan, as ever, held the reins of the situation with unwavering authority. Emily, please take a seat. She complied, sensing the charged atmosphere around her. Logan folded his arms and fixed his gaze on the manager. Why not share with her what we've just discovered? The manager took a deep breath. Once upon a time, there is a mistake in the report review. Emily arched an eyebrow. A mistake? Absolutely. A file mix-up occurred, and it appeared as though the data had been modified. However, in truth, it was an error from within. Emily experienced a blend of relief and frustration. So, you decided to suspend me without taking the time to check the facts? The supervisor turned his eyes away, a clear sign of his embarrassment. The choice was made in haste. Logan struck the table with his hand, causing everyone to startle. A hasty choice? You almost jeopardized the career of a capable employee due to your own shortcomings. The two men recoiled. This will not be overlooked. Logan stated with a chill in his voice, I require a formal apology to be dispatched to Emily along with a comprehensive report detailing the events that transpired. The manager gave a swift nod. Certainly, Mr. Miller. Logan then shifted his gaze to Emily. You may resume your duties right away. She paused, her breath caught in her throat. Is that so? Truly. Honestly, I'm taken aback that you'd even consider sticking around after all this chaos. She smirked. Indeed, perseverance is in my nature. Logan returned the smile. I have observed. As Emily stepped out of the office, a tremendous sense of relief washed over her. She had returned. Yet what truly mattered was her awareness that Logan Miller stood with her. And at the core, that held greater significance than any bonus or promotion. For the first time, she found herself in the company of others. She realized that without Logan's intervention, she might still be caught in the futile struggle to validate an accusation that wasn't hers to begin with, and that signified she was in his debt. She felt uneasy about being in debt to anyone, particularly the CEO of the company. Yet, beneath the surface, the realization that Logan had cared stirred an unsettling warmth within her. In the days that ensued, the ambience at the company seemed altered. Emily observed that the way people regarded her had changed. Not with contempt, but with a sense of intrigue and a measure of admiration. Ultimately, not everyone emerged from a scenario like that without some form of impact. Yet beyond that, Logan stood apart. In a subtle manner, Emily could feel it. He lingered near her desk more frequently, inquired more about the reports, and regarded her with a gaze that left her feeling uneasy. Suddenly, an unforeseen event unfolded. On Friday afternoon, while Emily sifted through her emails, her phone vibrated with a direct message. Came from Logan. Evening meal. This evening. You are on your way. Emily arched an eyebrow. Excuse me? She gazed at the screen for a moment, ensuring she had interpreted it accurately. Was he asking her to join him for dinner? Was this a command, perhaps? She bit her lip, attempting to suppress the wave of nervousness that washed over her, and replied, Is this an invitation or a summons? The reply arrived just moments afterward. Call to action. Emily let out a sigh of exasperation, yet a soft laugh escaped her lips. So what brings this about? Let's refer to it as a joyous occasion for freeing you from that entanglement of sabotage. Emily released a theatrical sigh. In truth, this serves merely as a reminder of my debt to you. Precisely. Looking forward to our meeting at 8 p.m. I will provide you with the address shortly. Emily shut her eyes briefly. This was an unfortunate decision. Yet, for some inexplicable reason, she felt an undeniable certainty that her answer would be yes. That evening, Emily reached the restaurant slightly ahead of schedule. The venue exuded sophistication, featuring soft lighting and a refined ambience, undoubtedly stepping beyond her usual boundaries. Upon her arrival, a hostess guided her to the table where Logan sat, patiently awaiting her presence. He glanced at her and offered a faint smile. On time. I appreciate that. Emily arched an eyebrow as she settled into her seat. This venue is far too extravagant for someone who considers a granola bar an acceptable dinner option. Logan let out a soft laugh. I aim to leave a lasting impression. She grasped the menu and feigned deep concentration as she examined it. Are you trying to make an impression on me? He raised his wine glass, observing her through the edge. Seems that way. Emily sensed a gentle warmth rising along her neck. So what's the actual purpose of this dinner? Logan reclined in his chair, arms crossed defiantly. I was curious about how you've been holding up after all that transpired. She furrowed her brow. I'm doing well. He lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. Are you? Emily paused briefly, letting out a soft sigh. All right, it was terrible. Logan nodded, pleased with her candor. What comes next? What are your thoughts on how you feel? After a brief pause, she formulated her response. It seems I possess more strength than I realized. He offered a subtle smile. Indeed, that is correct. Emily locked eyes with him for a brief moment. In that moment, clarity washed over her. This was more than an ordinary dinner. That night felt distinctly unique. An unspoken tension lingered between them, both reluctant to acknowledge its presence. Yet they both sensed it. From that point on, the dialogue became much more fluid. Emily observed that in moments of relaxation, Logan's demeanor softened, revealing a less intimidating side than the one he presented at the office. Indeed, his dry, sarcastic wit never failed to entertain her. Logan discovered that Emily's charm was even more captivating beyond the confines of their workplace. Following an hour of engaging dialogue, the waiter presented the bill. Emily extended her hand toward her wallet, yet Logan halted her with a single glance. Are you really considering making a payment? She arched an eyebrow. I can't even divide it? Negative. That's quite traditional. Logan beamed. Refer to it as classic. She rolled her eyes, yet a smile crept onto her face. As they stepped out of the restaurant, the air between them seemed to shift. A fresh heaviness lingered in the atmosphere. There exists a truth that lingers in the air, palpable yet unvoiced. For the first time, Emily understood that she could be treading on dangerous ground. Until that moment, she had never truly paused to consider the significance of having Logan Miller's complete focus. Yet now it was undeniable. He gracefully opened the car door for her. Just as she was about to step inside, he uttered a phrase that sent her heart into a frenzy. This evening was delightful. Emily took a deep breath. It was merely a dinner. Don't become accustomed to it. Logan wore a sly grin. It's too late. She slipped into the car, her mind racing to catch up with the implications of her actions. However, one thing remained clear. Everything had changed forever. Emily had never envisioned that an ordinary dinner, well, perhaps not entirely ordinary, could alter the dynamics so profoundly between her and Logan. By the following Monday, as she stepped into the office, she anticipated a return to the usual routine. Yet, to her astonishment, everything was far from ordinary. There was an unmistakable shift. What's truly exasperating? She understood that Logan was the cause. He was behaving just the same. Yet Emily sensed the change. The way his gaze lingered on her. In the manner in which they regarded her following their shared meal. And above all, in the manner her heart responded whenever he was close. That was a significant issue. Logan Miller was not a person to be trifled with. That morning, Emily was engrossed in a report when she suddenly heard a throat being cleared beside her. She glanced upward and noticed Logan standing there, his hands tucked into his pockets. Expression is neither positive nor negative. Could you join the CEO for a visit to the cafe? Emily blinked several times. Was that a beckoning call? It was a call to action. With a playful roll of her eyes, she couldn't help but smile as she got to her feet. As they strolled to the company cafe, Emily couldn't help but feel the weight of the gazes directed at them. Attention was being drawn. Yet Logan appeared utterly indifferent. Upon arriving at the counter, he confidently placed the order, neglecting to inquire about her preferences. Dark brew. He instructed the barista to skip the sugar. Emily folded her arms across her chest. You believe you have a good understanding of who I am, don't you? Logan offered a subtle smirk. I believe that to be the case. Emily made an effort to push aside the thought that perhaps he truly did. With their coffees in hand, Logan guided her to a more secluded table. He paused in silence for a moment before he began to speak. Emily, I would like you to begin participating in more executive meetings. She almost sputtered her coffee everywhere. Excuse me, could you clarify that? He regarded her with a solemn expression. There is great promise within you. I'm curious to discover the limits of your capabilities. Emily blinked several times, attempting to comprehend. What if I choose not to? Please provide a compelling justification. She bit her lip, filled with uncertainty. The reality? She had the desire to, yet the anxiety of making a mistake was restraining her. Logan appeared to take notice. Fear of failure looms over you. Emily inhaled deeply. I prefer to avoid errors. Logan leaned forward, his arms draped over the table, fixing his gaze on her with intent, then discovered how to embrace failure without trepidation. Emily found herself speechless. Yet, beneath the surface, she understood he was correct. Perhaps it was the moment to embrace the challenge ahead. As the days unfolded, Emily came to understand that Logan was genuinely committed to this. She began receiving invitations to significant meetings. He sought her perspective with increasing frequency. Gradually, the perception of her among the colleagues in the company started to shift. She had transcended the role of mere assistant. Logan Miller held her in high regard, and that certainly caught attention. On Friday, as Emily was meticulously organizing a report, a notification caught her attention. A note from Logan. Shall we have dinner this evening? She arched an eyebrow. This time, he was genuinely inquiring. However, the issue? Emily understood that agreeing would mean stepping over an unseen boundary. She crafted a response. Not able to make it tonight. His reply arrived almost instantaneously. Got it. Yet, there will come a day when you will agree. Emily exhaled deeply, for she understood, beneath the surface, that he held the truth. The inquiry was, what would unfold when that day ultimately arrived? Emily believed that declining Logan's dinner invitation would resolve any emotional uncertainty. However, she was quite mistaken. Indeed, it appeared to only intensify his curiosity. What's even more frustrating? Her personal curiosity was expanding as well. As the days unfolded, Emily found herself immersed in a fresh routine filled with an abundance of meetings, a myriad of challenges, and an increasing number of interactions with Logan. She was captivated by all the knowledge she was acquiring. Yet, she couldn't shake off the growing unease that she and Logan were increasingly entangled in a perilous game. A game shrouded in silence. Yet it was a sentiment they both experienced. On Wednesday afternoon, Emily found herself at the company cafe, waiting for her coffee, when she felt the presence of someone approaching. She sensed his presence without needing to glance over. Logan whispered beside her, "Black coffee, no sugar." Emily wore a sly grin. "If I happen to change my order, will that drive you crazy?" He lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. "That would certainly let me down." She chuckled softly. With their coffees in hand, they settled into a serene table tucked away from the bustle. For a fleeting instant, it seemed as though they were simply two ordinary individuals. Then Logan shattered the stillness. What was the reason for declining dinner that evening? Emily found herself taken aback by that question. She paused, her eyelids fluttering briefly before she responded. Why? This would be an absolutely dreadful notion. Logan inclined his head ever so slightly, observing her intently. What could be the reason for that? She folded her arms across her chest. Since you hold the position of authority over me. He offered a subtle smile. That has never posed an issue in the past. Emily sensed a warm flush spread across her cheeks. Please, let's keep this normal. I'm not the one creating the awkwardness. She released a deep, weary breath. Logan, we understand that this is not feasible. He paused for a moment, contemplating his response. And what if I desired it to? Emily felt her heart pounding in her chest. He was straightforward now, yet she was unable to. She was unable to step over that boundary. With a deep breath, she offered him a subtle smile. In that case, it seems the issue lies with you. She turned and left, leaving him with unspoken words hanging in the air. That night, Emily found herself restless and unable to drift into slumber. She understood that Logan was not the type to surrender without a fight. For the first time, a thought crossed her mind. Perhaps it was time to let this go. What's the issue? She was already aware of the answer. however, acknowledging it was a different matter altogether. In the days that ensued, an unmistakable shift lingered in the air. Logan stood his ground. However, he also refrained from pushing. He simply existed in that moment, observing her, anticipating, and Emily understood that eventually, she would relent. The sole inquiry was about timing. For the past few days, Emily had been feigning normalcy, as if nothing was unfolding around her, feigning indifference to the way Logan's gaze sent her heart into a frenzy. She feigned indifference, masking the disappointment that lingered from his silence on dinner plans. Yet the reality was straightforward. The strain between them was reaching a breaking point. Emily understood that eventually, an event was inevitable. On Friday morning, Emily settled at her desk, deeply engrossed in the report that Logan had asked for. She was making an effort to concentrate. Every 5 minutes, her thoughts wandered back to him, to the manner in which he gazed at her, to the manner in which he appeared to be anticipating her surrender. What's even more frustrating, she found herself uncertain about the desire to continue her resistance. With a heavy sigh, she shook her head, attempting to concentrate on the figures laid out before her. Suddenly, her phone vibrated, signaling a new message. Came from Logan. My workspace. At this moment, Emily rolled her eyes, yet her heart fluttered with excitement. She picked up her notebook and rose to her feet, attempting to appear nonchalant. Yet, beneath the surface, she understood that this dialogue would stray far from the ordinary. As she stepped into Logan's office, a distinct change caught her attention right away. He was not positioned behind his desk as was his usual custom. Instead, he stood by the window, gazing out at the city. Emily gently shut the door behind her. Is there something you require, Mr. Miller? She inquired, making an effort to maintain a professional demeanor. Logan pivoted to meet her gaze, holding it for an extended pause. And then, without a moment's pause, he inquired, how long will you continue to act as if you don't share my feelings? Emily's heart paused for a moment. She was taken aback by his straightforwardness. With a deep breath, she folded her arms tightly across her chest. So, what do you believe my feelings are? Logan offered a subtle smile, hinting at an understanding of truths she had yet to confront within herself. It seems we share a similar sentiment. Emily averted her gaze, striving to manage the surge of feelings swelling within her. This cannot occur, Logan. He advanced a step nearer. Why not indeed? Once more, she locked eyes with him. Since you hold the position of authority over me. And Emily blinked, her eyes momentarily wide with surprise. That is incorrect. Logan arched an eyebrow, his skepticism evident. Incorrect for whom? For others? Or perhaps for you? She remained silent, since she lacked a response for that. And Logan was aware of it. He advanced another step, narrowing the distance that separated them. Provide me with a valid reason why this should not take place. Emily inhaled deeply, as it is bound to go awry. Logan inclined his head ever so slightly. And what if it succeeds? She paused, the air caught in her lungs. For the first time, she entertained that possibility. And that was absolutely chilling. The quiet that enveloped them was charged with unspoken words, a tension neither was willing to break. Emily sensed the warmth emanating from Logan, the depth of his stare. It felt as though he was poised, anticipating her surrender. And perhaps she desired to. Just as she was about to take action, the sound of Logan's phone ringing shattered the atmosphere. He gazed at the screen, letting out a deep sigh. This is something I must take. Emily nodded with urgency, seizing the opportunity to depart. She craved the fresh breath of freedom. In the days that followed, Emily made every effort to steer clear of Logan. Not due to her anger, yet she understood that remaining near him would make it impossible to hold back. At this moment, she felt unprepared to confront that. Yet, Logan appeared reluctant to move on. On Tuesday afternoon, a message from him arrived in her inbox. Evening meal. This evening. There are no justifications. Emily bit her lip, caught in a moment of uncertainty. She understood that agreeing would mean there was no way to retreat. Just as she was about to respond, another message from Logan appeared. Simply dinner.
Y assure you.
Emily exhaled slowly, and before she had the chance to reconsider, she responded. Understood. The evening meal turned out to be unexpectedly simple. They exchanged tales about their jobs, shared amusing anecdotes from the workplace, and engaged in everyday conversations. For just a fleeting moment, Emily allowed herself to escape the burden of the circumstances. As they exited the restaurant, the unavoidable occurred. Logan seized her arm just as she was about to step into the taxi. She gazed at him, taken aback. Emily. His voice carried a deeper, more powerful resonance. Her heart raced with intensity. In a moment that caught her off guard, Logan leaned in and pressed his lips against hers. The kiss came unexpectedly. It defied all reasoning. It was bound to happen. There was longing, strain. However, there is an additional aspect to consider. There was a truth Emily was reluctant to acknowledge. As they separated, Logan gazed into her eyes, offering a subtle smile. Do you still see this as a mistake? Emily found herself at a loss for words. In that instant, her thoughts were consumed by a singular desire. To kiss him once more. Perhaps that was the most perilous aspect of it all. Emily found her mind endlessly wandering back to that kiss. It was illogical. It was incorrect. And yet, she found herself unable to wish it away. From the moment she crossed paths with Logan Miller, her life had taken a wild turn. And now, the facade could no longer be maintained. The reality was undeniable. The dilemma was how to address it. The following morning, Emily awoke feeling even more drained than she had the night before. The night was a chaotic swirl of intertwined thoughts, echoes of the kiss, and the heavy weight of uncertainty about its significance. She had to think clearly. She was employed by Logan. He held the position of authority over her. This might throw a wrench into the works. Yet, as she cycled through those thoughts in her mind, a sense of inevitability washed over her. She understood that the moment had slipped away. The reality was straightforward. She yearned for something greater, and that posed a challenge. In the office, an unusual atmosphere lingered, not in a subtle manner. Yet, Emily sensed Logan's gaze lingering on her each time he strolled by her desk. He failed to bring up the kiss, yet he also didn't shy away from her. He seemed to be in a state of anticipation, as though he was hoping she would come to a conclusion. As time stretched on, her understanding deepened. Time was running out for her to make a decision. As Friday drew to a close and the workday came to an end, Emily was in the midst of gathering her belongings when an unexpected notification caught her attention. A note from Logan. Penthouse at 8 in the evening. Emily felt her heart pounding in her chest. She understood that by going, all uncertainty would vanish. Yet, in that instant, she felt no desire to flee any longer. With a deep breath, she made the choice to move forward. Upon her arrival at the penthouse, Logan was already present, casually leaning against the railing, gazing out at the sprawling cityscape. He pivoted at the sound of her footsteps drawing near. I didn't expect to see you here. Emily offered a faint smile. I considered the possibility of not attending. He lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. What prompted you to do that? She paused, enveloped in silence for a moment. She inhaled deeply and revealed the truth. I choose not to escape from this. Logan locked eyes with her for a brief moment. In silence, he moved nearer and pressed his lips against hers once more. This time, certainty reigned, and excuses were absent. It was genuine, and Emily was done resisting. Yet, as they separated, a single question hung in the atmosphere. What comes next? In the days that ensued, Emily and Logan maintained their meetings beyond the confines of work. Yet within the confines of the office, everything remained the same. They exhibited a high level of expertise. Yet those familiar with them began to perceive that a change was in the air. Emily was aware that it wouldn't be long before inquiries began to arise. On Monday, Logan summoned her to his office. Emily shut the door firmly and folded her arms across her chest. Is this concerning our professional matters or our relationship? He offered a faint smile. This moment regarding our story. She took a deep breath. What is it exactly? He regarded her with a solemn expression. This secret cannot remain hidden indefinitely. Emily sensed a knot forming in her stomach. Are you considering sharing this with everyone? Logan gave a nonchalant shrug. I refuse to conceal myself. I have no need to. Emily paused, lost in thought. She inhaled deeply and gave a firm nod, for she had always sensed that this moment was inevitable. The thought of being open about what was unfolding between her and Logan filled Emily with a fear she was reluctant to acknowledge. Recently, all things had felt uncomplicated. It could be just as uncomplicated as a connection with Logan Miller. Beyond their professional lives, they met each evening. They discussed a myriad of topics. They shared a hearty laugh. To her own astonishment, Emily found herself relishing it more than she ever expected. Yet within the confines of the office, everything remained unchanged. Or at least they had been until this moment. The following morning, Emily stepped into the office, sensing an unusual tension lingering in the atmosphere. She felt the weight of their gazes, each one a silent judgment. Soft murmurs exchanged between them. Some simply gazed without restraint. Her brow furrowed, a look of bewilderment crossing her face. Suddenly, her gaze fell upon something that sent a chill through her core. A news article flickered on a nearby computer screen. The CEO of Miller Enterprises was seen enjoying a private dinner with a member of the staff. Emily paused, her breath caught in her throat. The article did not include her name. What about the photo? The image captured her and Logan as they exited the restaurant just last week. Her cheeks flushed with warmth. She hurried to her desk and picked up her phone. A message from Logan awaited my attention. My workspace. At this moment, as Emily entered his office, she closed the door firmly behind her and folded her arms across her chest. This has come to light earlier than we anticipated. Logan perched on the edge of his desk, phone in hand. He appeared completely unfazed. We were spotted at the restaurant. Emily exhaled softly. What comes next? Logan gave a nonchalant shrug. Now we progress onward. Emily arched an eyebrow. Is that all? Are you indifferent? He gazed directly into her eyes. Are you concerned? Emily prepared to respond. Yet, she came to the unsettling realization that the answer eluded her grasp. In the days that ensued, the rumors circulated with astonishing speed. In the workplace, each person had a viewpoint. Some suggested that Emily was attempting to ascend the ranks of the corporate world. Some believed she was merely a fleeting distraction for Logan. With each passing rumor, a sense of suffocation enveloped her more deeply. However, Logan appeared undisturbed. He remained unshaken by it, and in a sense that vexed her. For her, this was anything but simple. This was her profession, her journey, and now it was being regarded as a scandal. On Friday, after a particularly challenging day, Emily was collecting her belongings to head out when Logan suddenly appeared next to her desk. Let us proceed. Her brow furrowed in discontent. Where is it? To a location where we can be undisturbed. She paused for a moment. Yet, she came to understand that this was essential for her. With determination, she gathered her belongings and trailed behind him. They chose a secluded restaurant, away from the watchful gaze of others. After days of tension, Emily finally inhaled deeply and let herself unwind. Logan observed. Challenging day? She emitted a laugh devoid of humor. Among the least favorable. He locked eyes with her for a brief moment. This can be resolved. Emily gently shook her head. Negative. If I can't manage this by myself, then I lack the strength to be present. Logan offered a faint smile. That's one of the qualities I appreciate most in you. Emily felt a sudden rush of excitement. Just as she was about to reply, he leaned over the table and grasped her hand. We will overcome this challenge. In that instant, Emily yearned to trust him. For all the challenges she faced, she remained resolute in her determination to persevere. This is not the right fit. Not on him. Emily could never have foreseen the unexpected direction her life would take. Upon joining Miller Enterprises, her primary desire was to find stability. Now, her existence was laid bare on the pages of gossip websites. In the office, murmurs floated through the air, accompanied by inquisitive glances and uninvited assessments. Yet there was also Logan. Amidst the turmoil that surrounded her, being with him brought clarity to her world. On Monday morning, Emily entered the office with a fierce resolve, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. She refused to conceal herself. She refused to allow anyone to dictate the narrative of her life. To her astonishment, as the day progressed, the comments began to dwindle. Individuals swiftly transitioned past controversies, appearing eager for the next unfolding drama. Yet for Emily, the true challenge loomed on the horizon. Recently, there has been an unmistakable change in Logan. There was an intensity in his gaze as it met hers. There was a certain weight in the brief pauses that preceded his words. It seemed as though he was poised, anticipating the perfect moment for an event to unfold. And deep within, Emily sensed that moment approaching. On Friday evening, Logan extended an invitation for a unique dinner experience. Yet, on this occasion, there was an unmistakable shift in the ambience. The dining establishment was exclusive, the table adorned with flickering candles and vibrant flowers. As Logan grasped her hand, a sense of anticipation washed over Emily, signaling that something monumental was on the horizon. He gazed into her eyes, inhaling deeply. "Emily, I've always struggled with conveying my feelings." She offered a faint smile. He let out a soft chuckle, observing the situation. "However, you altered that." Emily's heart raced with intensity. Logan exhaled deeply and pressed on. "I believed my life was whole. I possessed it all. Yet your arrival changed everything. For the first time, it dawned on me that there was something I lacked." Emily's eyes burned with the threat of tears. He offered a subtle smile before lowering himself to one knee before her. Emily's eyes grew wide, and a sense of breathlessness washed over her. He delved into his pocket and retrieved a petite velvet box. He carefully opened it. Within the restaurant's gentle illumination, a breathtaking ring sparkled brilliantly. "Never did I envision encountering someone as remarkable as you." Logan grasped her hand with a steady grip. "Person who pushes my boundaries, brings a smile to my face, inspires me to strive for improvement." Emotions cascaded down Emily's cheeks. "You showed me that existence transcends mere achievement. Yet, it's truly about the companions we have to experience it alongside." Logan inhaled deeply. His gaze was firmly fixed on hers. "Emily Carter, will you marry me?" Emily's heart raced with overwhelming emotion. Her smile was uncontainable, as the tears streamed down. In that moment, she uttered the words that would alter the course of her existence eternally. "Absolutely." After a considerable period, Logan allowed a genuine smile to break across his face. He gently placed the ring on her finger and rose to his feet, drawing her into a kiss brimming with unspoken vows. At that instant, everything else faded away. Only the simple truth that they had selected one another. After months of anticipation, the momentous day had finally come. Emily had never experienced such intense anxiety. Yet she had also never experienced such joy. She stood before the mirror, adorned in a stunning white dress that captivated the eye. Her eyes glimmered with feeling. As the church doors swung open, her gaze fell upon Logan standing at the altar. He appeared flawless in his black suit. Yet his gaze retained that familiar intensity. Yet, there was an intriguing development on the horizon. Profound essence. It was a secret that belonged solely to her. As Emily strolled down the aisle, the world around her blurred into insignificance. It was merely the two of them. As she paused before him, a profound certainty washed over her. This was precisely the place she was destined to be. The judge commenced the ceremony, yet Emily scarcely registered the words spoken. Logan's presence enveloped her completely. He grasped her hands with such intensity, as though he intended to hold on forever. At last, the moment arrived for the vows. Logan gazed at her, a smile spreading across his face. "Emily, I never expected someone like you to enter my life and completely transform it in the most wonderful way. She released a gentle chuckle, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I have always been someone who craved assurance. Yet you showed me that often the most wonderful moments are those we never anticipated. Logan inhaled deeply before proceeding. I vow to cherish you, to stand by your side, and to remind you daily of the profound impact you've had on my life. Emily held back her tears and grasped his hands tightly. At last, it was her moment. Logan, when I first encountered you, I had no inkling of the profound impact you would have on my life. He let out a quiet laugh. Emily beamed. Yet now, I find it impossible to envision my existence without you. She inhaled deeply before pressing on. I vow to cherish you, even in your moments of stubbornness. I assure you, I will chuckle at your corny jokes. I vow to be with you in every triumph and every obstacle that comes our way. Emily gazed deeply into his eyes. Above all, I vow to belong to you now and forever. Logan gulped, visibly affected. And at last, they listened to the words, I now pronounce you husband and wife. He did not hesitate. He drew Emily into a fervent kiss, while the crowd surrounding them erupted in applause, their eyes glistening with tears. In that instant, they realized this was merely the beginning of an unfolding narrative, a tale they would craft side by side, for all time. How did you feel about the narrative of Emily and Logan? Share your reflections in the comments section. How would you evaluate this story on a scale from 0 to 10? Join us by subscribing to the channel and activating notifications to stay updated on all our narratives. Be sure to explore additional heartfelt tales by clicking here on the final screen.